Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and the show that I have for you today is all about beginnings. Beginnings of Better Life Television. But we have to start way before that. So I want you to meet my guest, Evelyn Wagner. You have been here since, well, before the idea was hatched, right?
That's right.
Way back about starting here?
Well, that's about the time I came to first time I was down here in Southern Oregon.
Okay.
But I'm an Oregon person. I was born and raised and most of my life lived in Oregon.
Okay, but you're from out in Central Oregon, right?
That's where I was raised, up in Central Oregon.
And how do you call yourself?
I just call myself an Oregonian because people said, where did you come from California? And I said, I've been here all my life.
Now, there's a tiny, tiny spot that you called home, right? The folks had a...
Well, in the Willamette Valley, I grew up until I was 10, then I went to Central Oregon. And when we lived in Central Oregon, I went away to school, and that's where I met Delmer in high school.
And I learned all about it in a book that Evelyn Wagner wrote called Patty. Where did the name Patty come from?
Well, when I wrote the book, some of these experiences in the book were really pretty painful. They're funny now, but at the time they were painful, and I couldn't put my name there. I just had to put something else. And my dad, when I was little, he called me Patty. That was a special name to me.
That is. Okay. And the painful things here all seem to...
They seem funny to Delmer, always. But they were not funny to me.
It tells about a young bride, right?
Right.
Who marries...
this adventurous man.
Look at him. Doesn't she look like the picture right out of Bride magazine? This skirt, the train on your wedding dress must have been 10 foot long.
Well, it was long for our little church that we got married in.
Went out. Now, this is Delmer Wagner that we know from Better Life Television.
That is right.
Now, Delmer, did he have big dreams at this early stage of his life?
He's always had big dreams. When he was in high school, he made all of his way through high school by fixing radios. He had a little shop when he was just a very young teenager.
Now, this was a Christian school that
That's right.
Had to pay tuition
That's
and
right.
room and board and all that. So
he-
it wasn't just like getting school clothes.
Oh, no.
He had to get those too.
Right, right.
And he went to school where?
We went to Walla Walla College Academy. That's where I met him.
Up in southern Washington State, southeastern. So that wasn't too far from where you lived, from Bend.
Well, not too far, not as far as I am now.
What's the town that you,
Terrebonne is where I grew up. Where I grew up?
Yes.
Yes, at Terrebonne.
Terrebonne. Now that's kind of
Strange
a
name.
suburb of
Redmond, and we lived about 20 miles from Bend. Everybody knows where Bend is, it seems like.
Right. And so this is where?
This is in Redmond, 5 miles from where we lived.
Okay. But where did you meet Delmer? You were off at school?
Yes, I met him when I was in high school. We were both juniors at the time.
16, 17 years
Right.
old.
I was
and
16, he was 17. Right.
Sounds like a song. Now, was it love at first sight?
It almost was. It almost was. He came a little late for school because I think he didn't only work on the radios. He also picked fruit in the fall to help pay for his tuition and help pay for things. So he came to school a little bit late that year.
And that was traditional down here too, that if the hop crop was late, school kids started late.
That's
because
right.
they had to earn their way. Well, now, how old were you when you got married?
I was 20, he was 21.
Oh.
But we had a real hard time getting the marriage license because his father was killed when he was 6. His mother was at Walla Walla planning to come down on the day. And when we went down to the courthouse to get our marriage license, they wouldn't give him the marriage license. I mean, they wouldn't sign for the marriage license because they said you have to be 21. And he couldn't seem to convince anybody he was 21.
Well, look at this kid. And in your book, Patty, I read that you found someone to verify it.
Yes, there was a lady. Well, I took my cousin to, after they finally decided that they might as well sign. It was just about closing time. Then they asked my cousin, well, then you sign here as a witness. You have to be 21. And she said, well, I'm 19. So we had to find someone very quick, and we got our marriage license signed just as the clock struck 5.
Now, the reason that it was the last moment, the last day, was that Delmer had been elsewhere.
Well, yes. At that time, he picked up jobs wherever he could. And at that time, he was flagging for planes. You know what that is? When the planes were dusting, and then they'd go over 30 feet, and the plane would come in. And he was one of those
flaggers.
And that's what he was doing, and they had more work to do, so he waited. In fact, it was a two-seater little plane, and there were 2 flaggers and the pilot. So Delmer sat on the fellow's lap when they came on the plane, and the plane came down and hit rough ground and went out stop, and Delmer's head went through the ceiling. I mean, this is the life Delmer lives, an exciting life.
Will it last? That's what I want to know. Will it last? 50 years later. And this was a couple of years ago.
So. Right, that was a couple of years ago.
52 years of marriage. Now, if you folks don't know about Delmer, we'll both fill you in. First of all, not only is he hardworking, but he has a mind that's 2 steps ahead of everybody else, right?
Right.
So you folks had a self-sufficient home before it was even popular to...
See, when he grew up he came to the Rogue Valley when he was about 6 years old. So this was home, and he always wanted to come back to he called it the Garden of Eden. He loved Southern Oregon. And when he and his brother were little after their father was killed, they made their own electricity, he and his brother, water power. He always wanted to get back and make his own water power. So that's what we came back. He found a place that had a creek on it and started working on his own water power system.
Now, do you have a water wheel?
It's a Pelton wheel, it's called. Yes, it's a water wheel. I think we have maybe several now.
Now, I've talked to someone else who makes so much electricity they have to run lights all night. You don't have to.
Well, we put it back into the company. And that way we make enough in the wintertime that we usually don't have to pay anything in the summertime when the creek is down, when it's a dry summer.
So now you actually provide electricity through this creek to me?
Well, it's not really that way. It's, they fixed it up, the fellow came out and they fixed it up so it makes our meter run backwards.
Oh.
So that we're really putting it into I probably do, it probably does for you. Right.
Thank you. Now, yes. You live only 1 mountain away from me, but to get from my house to yours is a day's journey.
Well, it seems like it, doesn't it?
You're living in Jackson County.
Right.
Near the end of the road. Well, I shouldn't say the end of the road, because the road then goes into a little 1 lane dirt road up over the mountains and down into North Valley.
That's true. It can come out at Sunnyvale, or if you turn north, it can come out at Azalea.
Sunny Valley, Azalea, or somehow you can end up in Agate, right? Down in...
I'm sure that's true.
Down at Camp White. I think the road just keeps going and going. And what's it like to live in rural America?
Well, sometimes it's better than others.
Now, this lady had a broken leg that would not heal. So that meant it was tough.
That's true. It was
What-
tough. It was a broken hip.
Okay. Give me the rundown on you and the broken hip.
Well, I was trying to get some letters out for Delmer really fast. You know, when you work for FCC and Better Life Television, you have to get it out on a certain day, and this was the deadline, and I was working very fast.
She also was a volunteer for Better Life Television.
And
For how many years?
oh,
Long
many.
before the station went on the air. Okay, let me stop
right.
interrupting.
That's fine. And we were in a big hurry, and I was trying to get this mail out, and Delmer was waiting. It happened to be my birthday, and so people were wonderful. They kept calling me on the phone, and Delmer would say, have him call back, have him call back. Well, because we were in a hurry, but you don't do that when people call you on your birthday. So then I jumped up to get something, and while I was hurrying, I have my computer, I was using a paper shredder, getting rid of some things. Well, I jumped up, my feet were tangled in the cords.
And
And I
we
was in a
all know
hurry.
what accidents happen.
Fast.
But it wasn't just a normal kind of a break. You really suffered.
That is true, and it didn't heal. And I
First
was
surgery, second surgery.
That's right. The second surgery worked, I think.
And she
yes.
was so courageous with her little walker. I'll never forget. I called and said, may we come out? And so I stopped and got the prettiest pastries I could find.
Oh, they were wonderful.
And came out not only to see her, but I had an interest in your self-sufficient home that you and Delmer have created. Now, let's talk a little bit about Delmer and his brains, because he's always been inventing, right?
That is true. Right after he got out of college, well, after we were married, he started working in a sawmill because he was making his college expenses. And mine too, I was going to school too. And he got in the sawmill business. So then right after he graduated, he bought a sawmill, and we moved up to the mountains for one summer. And then he just loved sawmills. So then he worked for a sawmill and was the electrician and started making moisture detectors.
And he said, I could do this.
It's never been done. Well, he just, if you say it can't be done, he says, why?
And they said about Better Life Television,
Can't be done, right.
not in little Southern Oregon, who could possibly put a station on the air? And Delmer and his friend, Bob Heisler, said, didn't they both get the idea kind of?
Well, what really happened was Delmer probably worked on it a year first. And then we wanted to be sure that the church was wanting this behind us 100%. And so the pastors, our main pastor said to Pastor Heisler, would you like to help the Wagners? He said, sure.
And
Then it really moved too.
And Bob, who I'd known when I was in high school, he had an interest in ham radio. In fact, I think Delmer's
Delmer's a ham too.
and I'm a ham, and my husband, and I don't have the knowledge, but these guys just kind of put their...
Well, I think the thing was they stepped forward and gathered knowledge as they went along.
Well, that kind of fits into what you have written here, right?
That's true.
I will lift up my eyes. Evelyn Wagner.
And Anne Reed was, well, what happened, I'd written the book and Anne kept saying, but I never got it published. And my mother was the last one to edit it. And then she was killed in a car accident. And Ann kept saying, "You've got to get that book finished, Evelyn. You've got to get that book finished." And I said, "Okay, Ann, you've got to help me because I can't do it. I lived everything." And so I said, "If you'll help me, we'll be co-authors." So Ann branched out and got other people to write chapters, which really helped a lot.
I think I had a call and said, "Would you tell us who you are?" And I had to sit down and think just who and why I'm a volunteer here. And it was a good experience for me to figure it all out. You've got pictures in here that are just so interesting. Now this book, folks, I'm sorry to say it's out of print, but you have news.
That's right. It's on the internet now.
So,
on Better Life Television webpage.
And there it is for everybody to see.
The book and the pictures are on.
And I saw a picture here of our friend from It Is Written.
Pastor Dan Matthews.
Danny Matthews. Oh, here's some helicopter pictures. That's how they got some of the things up the mountains.
That's right, because there was no road, and so they took it up by helicopter.
But you and Delmer, I heard that sometimes before cell phones, and there was a time before cell phones,
Yes.
that Ann Reed would put binoculars on the mountain and look up to see that Delmer was working and safely.
As he climbed the mountains, they could see the trail from their house, most of the trail. And she would see him struggling up the mountain, and Dave couldn't stand that. He said he'd had to help, and that's how Dave and Ann got involved.
And that's in northern Jackson County that they put the first.
The first tower was put up here in Grants Pass.
Okay.
And then the next one was put up in Rogue River.
And now they're how many?
Oh, don't ask me anything technical. I leave that to my husband.
This many towers. And oh, how wonderful it is that it's spread out. Well, now, we went from your story about you as a young bride, and there are stories in here that just are heart-wrenching because there were times when you were driving cars without brakes in unfamiliar country and Canada, right? Saskatchewan?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What were you doing up there?
We were selling books from door to door. They were Christian books, and that's the way, was a very good way to get a scholarship and make our tuition for college.
Wonderful. Well, now, I've not read this book, but Journeys in Faith, it's even...
That was a lot of faith that we had, because Delmer, that's when he made this equipment that had never been made before, and he pulled radios apart and put a machine together and made the first moisture meter.
Now, what's a moisture meter all about?
It checks the moisture in lumber. What we started with was when the lumber is going along the chain, he put it up above, and sometimes they have it below, and when the lumber goes through, if it's too wet, it will mark the mark the lumber so they can pull it out to put in the dryer.
And I got to go through a mill and see this because
really?
It's like a conveyor belt kind of thing. And I was fascinated. It was so interesting to see, and anybody uses this throughout the world.
I think pretty much so. Pretty much so if moisture is a problem.
And if moisture is a problem, then it comes through a second time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the lumber's not thrown away, they just know.
No, they just dry it more. But see, it's pretty critical when you build a house if the lumber is wet, so you have to check it.
Thank goodness, or else the house is going to shrink on you, and the nails are going to pop out.
So that's why they use this.
Well, they may have, you may have had a really incredibly wild ride here, but these are the people. 50 years after the Patty and her briefcase.
That's right.
And that's how Newlyweds, it gets started. You know, it was touch and go, wasn't it? I mean, finances were really, really tight.
Really, really tight. That's right.
Now, I know that finances are always a problem because Better Life TV has been an incredible sinkhole. I mean, there's no time that Delmer sits back and says, that's enough, does it?
Never, never. You know, I kind of wish he would once in a while. but I
his
don't expect
vision is always out there for more, go farther, go. I understand the next step is going to be out into eastern California, east of Redding. Northeast of Redding.
Oh, yes, that one is working on that one too.
I don't remember the name of that town over there.
You know, Bernie, he's working on several, so I can't.
Some that
I can't even remember.
Now, some of them, you said the parts, he took apart other radios, he put.
This is the interesting thing. He made this machine out of radio parts. And then a mill down here in Medford or Central Point, we lived up at Terrebonne then, told him he could put it in just as to test to see if it worked. And this was a very exciting time in our life. Well, after they had it for 2 months, the fellow said, we can't get along without this machine, and they bought it. But here it was a machine with all old radio parts in it. So once, after we got going, Delmer, when he went down to repair it, he put in a whole new machine with new parts. I don't think they ever knew that he put in the new machine because he didn't want just an old machine for them.
Well, now, do you still have that old machine?
The business may have that old machine.
When I had the kids that invented the flashlight on, you know, I said, well, how much would you sell that one for? Because it was the prototype with all the little wires.
No way.
It's museum stuff. Now, this 50th wedding anniversary you were joined by the happiest bunch of people. And these are?
Our daughter's behind Delmer and her family, plus one of their daughters was not able to come because she was back in Florida. And our son is standing behind me and his family.
Wow. And who are these people?
These are just relatives that came from all over to be at our 50th.
And then there was a throng of us besides these. There they are, husband and wife, happy. Evelyn, with that kind of courageous husband, what would an inventor, a visionary, a man that's way ahead of his time, how do you keep up?
I don't keep up. But I try. People say, what do you do? And I just say, I just run along behind Delmer picking up the parts.
The ones that he's discarded because they really didn't need. You've been a great inspiration to me. And you've written these books. This is about Patty's journey of faith. That goes after Patty and the briefcase.
Right. And before the next one.
And the next book has pictures of early beginnings of a lot of the things we've just been talking about. And it goes clear up to today.
Well, this was after we moved into this building, but not after it's been remodeled.
Because there's Dennis at work.
That's right.
And he has, this whole project, even our decorations, even our sofas and things, so much has been donated. Just like your time, my time, Delmer's time. I don't suppose he's ever drawn a paycheck.
No.
It's always gone the other way, right?
Well, we're just used to that.
And, the exciting thing is that we're fortunate enough to be able to volunteer. Not everybody can do that.
I consider that a privilege.
Absolutely. Now, here's Louise Teague.
Yes. She was the lady that answered our telephone when we first started Their Life Television.
And we just want to thank Louise from the bottom of our heart
That
for
is
being so
true.
faithful. That was up at a little room at the church school,
Just one little room is where we started.
kind of like Delmer starting out with those radio parts to build his. He has other inventions, right?
He probably has several, I mean, I know he has several patents, this way and that.
And here again, like the young people that I've talked to, they have patents, and they're still, well, one time they said in the beginning of 1900, we don't need a patent office. Everything's been invented that can be invented.
Yeah, Delmer thinks that's funny.
No cars, no electric ranges, no, where would we be? You've got a few words of wisdom. I call you a mother in the house of Israel. I am so grateful to have you among my friends, and of course pioneering in all manner of ways, from your courageous way of dealing with a broken hip to living a life off the power grid.
Sometimes that's a challenge.
I'll bet it is. But how do you do it? What's the morning start like?
Well, it's really not so bad now. When we first started, every day was a challenge because Delmer was fixing new things. But now it's pretty good. I really don't mind. I'm used to it, and I really don't mind it. And it's much, much better.
Oh, it is a woman of courage. And she has been so supportive of Better Life Television. And I just want to thank you a million times.
Thank you,
It takes
Bernie.
women like Evelyn to encourage me to go out on a limb and do something like Journeys and Journals for a very first time. I didn't know it could happen. But
See?
I thought, meet your neighbors. And that's what makes this show work. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying bye for now.